when I was consulting was a lot of people who are marketing themselves as a person, they don't think about it as if they're marketing a business. So I would say, look at yourself like a business. And as you would marketing any business, really identify like, what is your why? What is your headline? What's different about you? How are you distilling what you're offering?
Katie, thank you very much for joining me today on this Advisor of Tomorrow podcast. You and I were small talking beforehand, getting caught up. You went to Notre Dame, which is probably 3 hours north of me, and just wanted to give a quick introduction to you. But before I tell everybody the little bit I know about you and allow you to, I have a question I did not put on the agenda that I wanted to catch you off guard, but I know you're more than qualified to cover it.
Okay.
So I just want to start. This is probably the question everybody's going to care about. Who is the best Hollywood Chris?
Oh, I mean, it's Chris Evans. He is the best Hollywood Chris for so many reasons, but he started this platform recently called A Starting Point, which is designed to get people to have productive, healthy conversations about the democratic process. And I just think it's a brilliant idea. Also, I'm a huge, obviously, Marvel fan. So got to give it up for the best Hollywood Chris Evans.
All right, I didn't know who it was going to be. I think he's my number two. And as embarrassing as this is,
What?
Well, Chris Pratt, right? That's his last name.
Oh, yeah.
So I put him slightly ahead only because the transformation from a sloppy nobody on
Parks and Rec.
Yeah, Parks and Rec, which is an Indiana show, to move over to the world of Marvel and become this big superhero guy. And I think he has a little bit more personality, at least that aligns with kind of my personality. But Chris Evans is second because I have 3 boys and I never was into Marvel growing up. And then when my oldest started to get into it, now we love it. And our first exposure to Marvel was Captain America. So
there you go. Can't go wrong with a Hollywood Chris.
One and close to. All right. So like I said, that was probably what everybody cared the most about. But let's get into a little bit about marketing and kind of what you guys are doing at Public. So I came across your profile just through Twitter, like I do for so many people. And as I was sharing with you, I have this big goal of trying to help shape the way that financial services, in particular advisors, market themselves and brand themselves going forward. Historically, we do a horrible job. It's a lot of boats and stars and, everybody's using the same images. And as the profession evolves, we as advisors have more control over our story and our brand, especially in the independent world. So I look at companies like Public and some other ones out there, and you guys are doing a tremendous job building a brand, doing your marketing in, creative ways. You've got the IP oats, you've got the invest hat behind me that you give out. And I want to see if there's things that you guys are doing that we advisors could maybe take and tweak to our business. So Public, if you don't know, is a trading platform for the advisors out there that encourage their clients to have a fund money account. This would be the one that I would send my clients to because I think the way that you've structured it aligns with the values of an advisor. It's more precautionary in there. You can't day trade. You can't go on margin. There's a big community component to it that I want to get to later on. So I think Public is a great platform for that if you're the type of advisor. And if you want to learn more about it, on my other podcast, All About Your Benjamins, I had Life on and we talked about it. So that's enough of me rambling. Quick intro. Katie, can you real quick give your personal intro, your background, how you got to Public, that type of stuff?
Absolutely. So it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for the softball Chris question to kick things off. Always love that. So my name is Katie. I'm the VP of Marketing at Public.com. As Justin said, I went to school at Notre Dame in Indiana. I always wanted to be a journalist. That was kind of where my head was at for most of my younger years. I actually graduated during the Great Recession, though, and had a lot of trouble landing a full-time job after college, which was, looking back, it was a really good experience because it really taught me a lot of lessons about how to position yourself in a way that you're demonstrating the value you'll add to a company versus just resting on what your resume or what your GPA says, or where you went to school. And I really learned the hard way that it was about positioning yourself and your skill set against what a company needs to succeed. So for 9 months, I kind of looked for a job, and I was back and forth on different kind of paths. I had a lot of setbacks. I ultimately landed at this digital advertising agency that was pretty small at the time, but it was growing quickly because they had a bit of an advantage in search marketing, which at the time was growing like crazy. And so I ended up staying there for a few years as the agency grew, evolved, ended up being one of kind of the preeminent agencies in the early days of social. After that, I worked at a startup, and also I did a lot of startup consulting. So I was sort of like a fractional CMO for early stage companies, advising on their positioning and content strategy. After that, I had a stint at a publicly traded company where I was moving to more of a corporate strategy role. And I thought that was kind of the path I wanted to be on. When I had caught up with Life, who you know, and we were getting coffee, and he showed me this app, kind of slid his phone across the table. And I immediately just thought, like, this app is intuitive, it's beautiful, and it's addressing a real pain point for a lot of people, which is making the stock market more accessible. When I was 18, I remember on a Sunday, my dad set me down for 3 hours and told me about investing. He told me about the difference between day trading and long term. He showed me all of the basics, and most importantly, he empowered me, and he told me that this is something I could navigate myself and learn myself as a young person. And that was really, really instrumental in the following years of my life. And as I got into my 20s and now into my 30s, I look around, I have a lot of friends, very smart people, very professionally successful, but cannot grasp kind of the stock market. And it's not really a lack of ability on anyone's part, really. It's just that this is not taught in schools.
Mm-hmm.
I always look back and think about seventh grade shop class when somebody thought it was a good idea to show me how to use a jigsaw. I will never use a jigsaw ever in my life. I think classes like that are great for like life skills, but how about some education around, managing debt, understanding student loans, investing? All of those things are kind of just not part of your education growing up. So really got the mission of Public, and I joined a little over a year ago, and it's been a really great year. Love the team, love the product, and like I said, love what we're doing and building at the company.
Well, going back again to advisors, another reason I like Public a lot, I think there's a huge opportunity, and I have no inside information, but I've got to imagine as your platform continues to grow. I mentioned you guys are very big on community, which I love. I think, and I told Life this, there's going to be a tremendous opportunity to take this. Let's pull you in with the interest of the stock market. Now that we've got you here, you're seeing growth. Now, I think you guys are going to have a huge opportunity to be our friends in the profession and drop education and financial literacy to your community members and help them learn, okay, now that you got lucky and you bought Tesla and it's up, 300%, what do you do? And, while you're working about that, dropping information about budgeting and other things. So what I look where Public could go, just from my lens, I think there's a lot of partnership with the financial advisor community, because at the end of the day, advisors want to see people handling their money properly and seeing them move forward. And we can't serve everybody. Not everybody wants to work with a financial advisor, but if there are companies out there that are providing that literacy to them, I think that's a win for everybody. I talk about advisors being on the same team, not competitors. I look at public.com as a company that's not a competitor. You're serving a demographic that probably isn't going to call a financial advisor up, but you can help them do better. Like, that's a win, because again, even though you guys are really focusing on the stock market right now, we're all lumped together as financial services. And we need to make financial services look better. So a rising tide lift all boats. I think that what you guys are doing and the potential there is awesome. So
yeah, I mean, we're really facilitating that education. We're a broker dealer. We cannot give financial advice. That is not the business we're in. We're a technology company that has built a community and really nourished a community where productive educational conversations can take place between people of different experience levels, different professional backgrounds, different walks of life, different perspectives. And so all of our work and everything we're doing is to build really intuitive features that make it possible for people to get these conversations out into the open. And sometimes it's, me hitting up my cousin on a DM in the app and sending him a stock chart because we love to talk about investing. Other times it could be, there's a lot of coaches and financial advisors in the app who are kind of sharing content. And you can almost think of Public in that sense as just another social platform in your suite of where you're producing content and raising awareness for your brand. Public is just another one of those platforms. And so we do see a lot of people in the financial services space offering their knowledge and offering their insights, because to your point, not everyone's going to necessarily want or need a financial advisor, but that's a great way to market yourself in an environment where people are open to learning. And so again, like we're just facilitating that education. Everything we're building is all about facilitating those social connections that make it possible for people to build their confidence.
The light bulb went off in my head as you started going down that path. I think I might go back and not really. I'm going to edit that section out so no other financial advisor hears about it and I can leverage marketing on public. But and so I think that one of the things that as more advisors figure that out, like I don't know how it can be done, but I think you want to avoid the TikTok type of finance advice that goes on over there and not have that going on in public, because then I think that would potentially water down the benefit that's going on. But you guys can address that as time goes on. But we'll let listeners go listen to All About Your Benjamins to learn more about the platform. I want to get to how you're fostering this community and what you guys are doing to grow the community and grow your business. Because that's, your plate as the VP of marketing is to make sure those things are going on. Before we get to public, you may not be looking for financial advisors because it sounds like you had a great teacher in your father. The fact that he sat you down and empowered you with all this information is huge, because if it's not happening in the schools, a lot of times it's not happening in the home either. But if you were looking for a financial advisor, or as you look at the financial advisor space and what you see from marketing and branding, what are we as a whole doing wrong?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing with financial literacy is even if you feel pretty confident, there's always more you can learn. There's always new things happening. There's always more you can be absorbing. So I think, even me myself, I'm not open. I mean, I had someone teach me, but I'm not open to an advisor. I think for me personally, just from personal experience, like here's my experience with financial advisors. I was thinking about this, like the first time I remember ever kind of this even being on my radar was when I had gotten promoted a few years ago. And as soon as I got promoted on LinkedIn, like 4 people were like in my DMs, kind of the same boilerplate cold pitch. And I remember at the time thinking like, oh, isn't this for really rich people? So I think the first is kind of like, it seems like there might be a mischaracterization around coaches and advisors and kind of who those people are for. I think a lot of people think that, you have to be really wealthy to afford or to need a financial advisor. And we're kind of in a similar boat of kind of what we're trying to break through at Public, which is a lot of people think you have to be really, really wealthy to invest. Mm-hmm. And so they don't, if they're not at a certain point. So I think there's the awareness thing. And I think also just kind of an education around what are financial advisors doing? What is the value? I've gotten, a few kind of cold pitches, and I've never kind of extracted the like why from them. It's always kind of just the pitch. Mm-hmm. And so I think if you're reaching out to someone and trying to kind of sell your services, I would say kind of get outside of the world you're in and understand that most people, most regular people don't grow up with anyone in their family who has financial advisors. Most people don't have direct experience. There's kind of a lack of education around the why. And so I think a big piece of it is the storytelling of mm-hmm. why this partnership or why working with you is going to add value and what someone could expect from that investment on their part.
I love that you shared the LinkedIn DMs, because that's so stereotypical of advisors. And I feel like it's not very personal as well, especially if it's just a service. I mean, I know there's groups out there that like once somebody changes a title, it automatically sends the boilerplate. And, looking at your profile and seeing where you're at like that, I think there's an opportunity if you tailor the message properly, to like let them know that you actually looked at the individual's profile and kind of saw where they might be, versus just, congratulations on the job change. You might have a 401k rollover I can educate you on.
Exactly. See, that would have been, that connection. Sometimes mm-hmm. people don't draw the connection that you're making in your brain. I think that's just like true of any marketing. Mm-hmm. You got to kind of realize how insular you are in your role, and you're like, 8 to 12 hours a day, your head's down in a specific space and industry, and you forget that other people, you're just a tiny piece of their life in their world, and you got to draw that link sometimes.
Let's dive deeper into the education and the content strategy, because I love that. I think that that is the best way to grow, especially I want to set the stage. I'm thinking more of independent advisors. They don't necessarily have to be small, but not the big broker dealers, not the big wirehouses that have huge compliant issues, but if firms where they're more in control of telling their story. You guys do a decent amount of content. You create that builds this brand. What would be advice you would give advisors to kind of go down that path of telling their story? I love storytelling. And then creating content and kind of how that plays. And again, I think the beauty of this is you would be an ideal client for a lot of financial advisors, a young, successful, up and coming professional who understands finance, but also understands they might want to outsource that. So, we're getting an ideal prospect to tell us, what would resonate with someone like yourself. What would advise, but you also have a marketing background. So what should advisors think about when it comes to storytelling and content and brand building?
I think with content, you have to think of it through the lens of what value are you adding to someone's feed, to someone's life. I think the kind of the most common mistake with content is people just create something from their perspective, not thinking of what is this actually doing for the recipient. And that could be, education, it could be entertainment, it could just be something fun, but there has to be something that you're adding to that experience because people are inundated with messages all day. So in any industry, you're not just competing against, the other financial advisor over there, or for us, the other brokerage. You're competing against Netflix, Fortnite, all their friends, emails, everything. And so getting attention has never been more difficult, but there's also a really interesting opportunity now with the way media has been completely democratized that you can deliver content that is valuable to people. And I think the education piece of your world in financial advising is really ripe for a lot of these social platforms. You brought up TikTok. There is a lot of, questionable tips across every kind of category of anything on TikTok, but there's also sometimes great information. I think the one thing on TikTok is the format lends itself to distilling complex things in simple ways. Now, we don't want everyone to just think that something as complicated as, building a diversified portfolio or analyzing a stock could possibly be mastered in a 1-minute video, but it does do a really good job of making this stuff more accessible and more human. And I've seen this, there's a lot of kind of professionals on TikTok who are just sharing their expertise. So one I see a lot in my feed is like psychologists breaking down simple terms for people, or medical professionals talking about what people are seeing on the news. And these are all ways to kind of bring kind of home some of these things that might feel really far away for a lot of people. So I've seen, TikTok is one place, and I know that's not for everyone. One clever thing I've actually seen a lot of from financial advisors and just my experience is on Quora. And Quora is a site where you can ask a question and people will weigh in and give answers. And the people on the platform are like ranked by the quality of their answers, and you can kind of suss out who's legit and who's not. And I see a lot of people asking questions about financial topics on there. And what a great way for an advisor to build content, actually address a very specific question. And now that lives on the platform. So now other people are Googling that, looking it up, and your brand is right there with a valuable explanation of what the question was. So there's a lot of kind of creative ways to do it that isn't just, to your point, an Instagram post of a yacht and, a headline. So I think those ways are really effective.
Well, two things that come to mind on the TikTok. I think one way to think of it is, since it's 1-minute clip, it's just really about getting the viewer's attention and then being able to get them engaged enough to go see your content where you're maybe breaking it down more. So it might be something where you break down the concept real quick. And I think there's a lot of value in being able to take complex ideas and explain them in a way that's very easy to understand, that shows you're an expert, rather than using big words that complicate people. Like, that's fake expertise. If you can really dial it down to where my 10-year-old can understand it, then you really understand the concept. So think of TikTok as kind of like the attention grabber, have some fun with it, show some personality, and then get them over to your deeper content. And Quora's never come up before on anything that I've done or anybody I've talked to. So that's a great idea. And I think another way to go deeper on that for advisors, a lot of struggle for advisors is coming up with ideas. Like, how do you come up with that content ideas? Well, you answer the question on Quora, and then you go write a longer, deeper post or record a video or something to supplement that, or be a totally different piece of content, but it's fielding those questions over here because they're going to be different audiences. The Quora audience may never come to your blog. Maybe they do over time. Your blog readers or people who find it, your video, may not go over to Quora. So if you're looking for ideas, that's another place to find questions to go answer.
Yeah, and just to add on, the best content I do think comes from listening to people. And so in social, you can publicly listen to people. I know at Public, we will always see conversations happening in the community, and it will spark an idea for a longer form blog post that we write for the Learn section of our site, because we saw people asking about it on the app. And, you know, like I said, it's just a way to get outside of yourself and understand what people are actually curious about. And just by going to the places where people are having these conversations, whether it's Public or Quora or Twitter, that is just a well of ideas that if you're trying to create content, you can draw from.
Mm-hmm. So I like to learn and I'll say borrow, but take from companies that are doing things I think are cool or people, and then kind of craft them to be my own. So let's talk a little bit about Public strategy to see if there's anything that you're doing on a larger corporation level that maybe some of us can borrow from. So without getting too deep, like what's the overarching strategy for your marketing for Public? Because you guys have fun with it. So what's that look like?
Yeah, so I mean, our strategy is really just to make this stuff inclusive, educational, and fun. That does not mean watering it down. That does not mean, you know, promoting reckless sort of behavior. To us, that means making it kind of a people first, a human first approach. Mm-hmm. Because I think stereotypically, financial services for most people is something that exists over here, and they feel like it's not for them. They feel like it's closed off. They feel like it's elitist. I think even the jargon that sometimes people throw around, to your point, people love to use big words to sound smart. I think the smartest people use the simplest words and say things very succinctly in the way that the most people can understand. And so that comes to life everywhere in our product, in our marketing. One of our principles in the app is when we write copy, it should sound like a human being is saying it and not, you know, Encyclopedia Britannica. Mm-hmm. It's really, and even in our kind of like our stunts, like you mentioned, IPOs, really it's all about tying these topics to more mainstream things that people can grasp. So Airbnb is a brand that most people have had experience with, whether they rented or they were a host. So this moment where they're IPOing is something where it could be a great educational opportunity for people who have familiarity with a company to learn about the IPO process, to find out what's in it, how to read an S1, to have conversations about when you should invest in an IPO, when you shouldn't, how to kind of assess that opportunity. And so everything we're doing is anchoring this stuff into the mainstream, because in order to really kind of create and reimagine a new culture around the stock market, we have to pull it out of these kind of more insular circles that it has existed in for a long time and make it something that everyday people can grasp.
Can you share the IPO? It's like what that is, and because I don't know if everybody's going to understand like the story behind it, but I think it's genius.
Yeah. So Airbnb, obviously, they're a company that has had an amazing journey. Started as a startup. There's a kind of legendary story, especially among the tech and startup kind of community, about the early days of the company. And there was a point in their early history where I think they had maybe $20,000 or $30,000 in debt that they needed to pay off. But they were pre-revenue. They were still kind of building this thing, and they needed a quick way to come up with the money. And so the year was 2008. The presidential election between John McCain and Barack Obama was coming up. And so they had this idea that they were going to create novelty cereal boxes, Cap'n McCain's and Obama-O's, and sell them online and kind of culture jack the moment when everyone was talking about the election. They ended up selling like 40 grand worth of boxes in like a few days. So not only did they make a little bit of money, I think the bigger kind of impact for them was that another kind of cluster of investors saw this and kind of saw that spark and creativity in the founding team, and it got them new interest and eventually new investment in the company. And, you know, as they say, the rest is history. So we wanted to kind of do something fun to kind of commemorate their journey from idea to IPO. And so we created our own cereal boxes in the same style, and we put their CEO, Brian Chesky, on them. We did a limited run of 500 and we gave them away through a microsite. And yeah, people loved them. But things like that, you know, it's a fun kind of activity, but it's a way to kind of anchor these moments where something that's happening in the business world is transcending into pop culture, and position ourselves in those moments, because that really aligns what we're trying to do as a company.
And I love that. Like, that's what I love about companies like Public and other companies I follow, is the creativity behind what are like in the moment, short-term marketing opportunities that bring a lot of attention, that people will appreciate. And that's what I want to see more of us advisors trying to do. If we take you back to your consulting days, if you were going to work with a financial advisor, like, how would you coach them, or what are ways to kind of, I mean, part of it's just, you've got to be creative. You've got to see the opportunity when it's there. But how do we go about finding these unique opportunities from an advisor standpoint? So think about our audience is a little bit different, but not totally different than yours. But how can we go about doing creative things like this with our either for our clients or for prospective clients to get their attention?
So yeah, one of the early things I learned when I was consulting was a lot of people who are marketing themselves as a person, they don't think about it as if they're marketing a business. So I would say, look at yourself like a business. And as you would marketing any business, really identify, like, what is your why? What is your headline? What's different about you? How are you distilling what you're offering in a very simple way? Instead of just, my name is so and so, I'm a financial advisor. Like, what is the hook for you? I would also say, consider, you know, we're a company, we have a lot of resources to build microsites, to literally manufacture cereal. But there's smaller kind of things that are more hacky that I think advisors and consultants can really learn from. And a lot of these kind of growth hacks, there's a lot of inspiration to be gleaned from the startup world, and even just smaller businesses. So one thing I always think about is how smart it is that hairdressers now, and I don't know if you know this, I don't know if your barber is doing this, but one thing you'll notice a lot of hairdressers do is they will go after clients who are influencers, and they will give them free haircuts in exchange for that person to promote them, right? That is something I think anyone in the services space could be benefiting from. If you're a financial advisor and you want to make an investment to advise, you know, one person who is open to it, who has a following, and, you know, part of the deal is you're able to kind of share some anecdotes, not giving away too much, but talk about working with them, and they get the kind of services, which is, you know, advertising. But that is a great way to get in front of new audiences, because I think, especially with consultants, advisors, anyone who's kind of working on behalf of themselves, word of mouth is huge. I'm sure referrals must be a huge kind of driver for a business for advisors. Is that?
Oh, that's what every advisor says they're growing their business, which we all strive for. So
Yeah.
totally.
So, you know, without huge ad budgets, without the ability to do big campaigns with PR, think through ways to kind of get that referral engine running, whether it's working with someone with a following, offering some sort of perk or promotion for, you know, your clients to refer other clients. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And then I think on the content front, it really is about consistency. It takes a while to kind of build an audience organically. It comes harder and harder to do that organically as the social platforms have evolved and they want you to buy ads. So, but I think it's the consistency, whether that's a short newsletter once a week, the same time every week, and you slowly scale up that list, whether that's a series on TikTok where every couple of days you're explaining a new term. Consistency is really important. And, you know, it doesn't happen overnight. It does take work. But if you can be consistent and consistently add value, that does pay off for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that consistency for me has been a struggle. But like I've lucked out that my consistency is, I'm going to create a lot of content, but it's not always going to be on the same day of the week or the month, which I think that if I could go back, I would have started with being more consistent and maybe creating less, but doing it on a regular basis. But sometimes you just get lucky when you create a whole bunch. Like people give you a free pass that they know they're going to get something, they just don't know when. And part of my future growth with my content marketing is I do want to get more consistent. So Advisor of Tomorrow podcasts are going to be every other Monday. And sometimes every other Friday, I'll record them live and post them out to YouTube. So I do think there's consistency, but I know advisors and we create a lot of excuses. I think consistency is important, but I also wouldn't let the lack of being able to be consistent, because if you're wearing a lot of hats, maybe you can't do it every month or every week. Don't let that be the hurdle. Don't wait until you can be consistent to start, because you'll never get started. Like I think you can start and then build in consistency as you build out your practice of doing it.
Yeah, and that's the hardest part of running your own business. I mean, you're doing the actual work, but then you're doing the books, the BD, the marketing, everything. And so, yeah, if you're working for yourself, building that in as you're managing your current clients it can be really challenging, especially in content creation, which I think for some people from the outside looks really easy, but I guarantee you some of these people are spending hours on one TikTok, and hours on a Twitter thread. And so it is, a lot of work, but I think it done right, it could really add a lot of value.
So one of my big goals from my advisory firm, and I want to share with you, just kind of get what your thought is. I want to try to create a brand. So my firm is 5 years old. Within the last 6 months, I've kind of changed. Did a rebrand. Who we're working with, having more of a niche. The niche is more mindset. So it's more about, I want our firm to help people who really want to take control of their destiny. So whether it is they're entrepreneurial and they want to start businesses, they want to take sabbaticals, I want to help people live non-traditional lives. And to me, traditional life is, work at a career for 30 years and retire. Like I want exciting people that will cause us to have to be creative with our planning, because it'll be fun. The hope is that the work that we do, the branding that we do, I want RLS Wealth to almost become a lifestyle brand, so that at least short term around Fishers, Indiana, people begin to have our circle logo on their car, like the little sticker, or they're wearing the hat. And the reason they're wearing it won't say RLS Wealth. It'll just be the circle. And the reason they're putting that out there is because they're proud of the life they've created with our help through planning, because they are in control of their destiny. And it's almost kind of like a badge of honor. So that's my vision for the firm and what I want to try to create. Now, I know that the planning has to back that up. We have to do a good job of getting the people who are the type of people who are proud of the work that they do and would put that out there. But I think that would be real cool to create a lifestyle brand for your firm, whatever your niche is or whatever it is your specialty is. I think you can create it where that brand stands alone and means something to the public, so that when somebody sees that sticker, maybe they're not living the life they want, and now they have a little bit of jealousy of that person, of, man, I wish I was doing things the way I wanted to do it. So that's my vision. I don't know if I'll be able to pull it off. That's where I want to head.
That's really cool. I think your positioning, at least from my view, is very differentiated, because I feel like, again, maybe a misconception, I feel like stereotypically, anyone who's kind of in financial services, people think the goal is always get rich fast. And I think you're hitting on something, that financial wellness and financial independence means different things to different people. And you hear all the time, like, people will say, or I have friends who know I work at Public, and they're like, what do I invest in? And I'm like, A, I can't tell you. And B, I'm like, well, what are your goals? What are you trying to do? What's your time horizon? Like, I think personal finance is a very personal thing. And, people, not everyone wants to, retire by the age of 40, but, not everyone's goal in life is to get as rich as possible, as fast as possible. People want to live a great life on their terms, and everyone has different kind of values and things they prioritize. So I think it's really smart that you're kind of positioning around the unique needs of different people, but like the thread there is what you're offering is a kind of a customized path to, your financial future, whatever way that may go. So I think that's pretty cool.
Well, the good news is, just so you know, there are more advisors that are embracing, it's more kind of like lifestyle planning or life planning,
Yeah.
that it's no longer we as the profession tell you what your goals should be. It's you as the client tell us what you want out of life, what your values are, what's most important, and then allow us to craft a plan to help you get there.
Yeah.
So that at the end of the day, it's basically helping people look back on life and not have any regrets. They did all the things they wanted to do, and they still got to retire at a reasonable age, but they didn't sacrifice everything for this ambiguous date down the road that maybe that's not when you retire. So
Yeah.
there will be more of that coming. Advisors listening to this podcast will be advisors doing that. There's groups like the XY Planning Network. There's the community that I started, the AGC. There are more advisors coming to bring this, but we're still outnumbered by the old school way.
Yeah.
Um,
Very
One
cool.
thing I want to make sure we hit on before we kind of get close to the end, we mentioned a couple of times that you're building a community with your public investors. And I mentioned I co-founded the AGC, which is a community of advisors, and community is becoming a little bit more popular, a little bit of a buzzword, but I think there's a lot of value. And another goal of mine, I'm rolling it out in January, is I want to create a community platform for my clients and the clients of the future, where the whole premise of this circle platform is nothing finance. It's all the other things that people might be interested in along this path. So it's wellness, it's mindfulness, meditation, and bringing a place where people can exchange ideas like they do on public.com, bring in resources for them, guest speakers that they might be interested in, and have this kind of supplement to the financial plan. So we've helped you create this plan for your life, and now we have this community that is designed to help fuel that plan in other ways that's not finance related. I think that's a unique opportunity that advisors, especially if they have a niche, whether that's a professional niche, an age niche, mindset niche, that there's going to be common interest amongst those people. If you're not a generalist, that you can provide a lot of extra resources to them that other professions may not be able to do. So convince everybody why community should be something that they think about, whether it's they actually have a platform or maybe they just view it, my clients are a community. How can I give them a better user experience with things that are of their interest?
Yeah, I mean, well, you're absolutely right. Community is a word that gets thrown around a lot these days. People just seem to ascribe any group of people as a community. I don't think that's true. I think community is something you really have to work at. It's a group of people with common values, ways of behaving, and general kind of goals. And to really build that and facilitate that in a social media environment is really tough. We've put a lot of work into creating a productive and an educational environment that is inclusive and is a little bit different culturally than other communities around investing. Our second hire on the marketing team was a community manager. That was a very important strategic role because when we were, much smaller a year ago, we really wanted to get the tone right. We wanted to set a clear tone in the community of how to behave, what types of conversations to expect, how to engage with other people. And actually, it's built right into the product when you onboard. There's a little kind of a few cards you swipe through that kind of educate people on the type of things we're about at Public. And that immediately sets a tone as people join the app. I do think another advantage we have is everyone's verified by nature of us being a brokerage platform. So you do see kind of healthier communities on platforms where anonymity isn't really possible, like LinkedIn. You don't really see a lot of people going completely off the rails on LinkedIn. I have seen a few, but most of the time people keep it in check. Why? Because it's tied to their identity. It's tied to their livelihood, their job. And so we do have that as an advantage, but I think a big piece of it is the work we've put into setting that tone as a productive environment. Mm-hmm. And to your point, I think these conversations about investing, they don't exist in isolation for most people. People are thinking about their financial wellness alongside every other facet of their life. And so while you can see a very extensive S1 breakdown on Public, I also saw a poll the other week that was talking about what emotion you feel when you think about money, and a whole conversation that flowed around that topic. So it is really a more holistic kind of conversation going in the community. And I think when you can get those conversations a little broader, a little more diverse in topic, not just a series of people screenshotting stock charts and kind of flexing about their Tesla investment or whatever it is. When the conversations are broader and more people based, they're more accessible to people. More people feel like they can join in and contribute to the conversation. And we think the more people who are contributing to the conversation, the better. If there's a diversity of thought in our app, if you have a teacher in there next to a mechanic, next to a healthcare worker, all of those people have direct experience and expertise in different areas. Alongside the founders and the investment experts and the coaches and the advisors. And so when you blend all that together, it's kind of a beautiful thing where people feel confident bringing their experience to the conversation. So creating that tone that feels productive, feels healthy is like the most important thing for us. And I think that's a really big thing to think about when you're building any community is what's the tone you're trying to set? What are kind of the rules of the road? And how are you going to make sure that those behaviors scale with your community?
And if you're going to try to go the community route or bring that component to your advisory firm, all of that can start with your social media, your content, like the messaging you're putting out there will set the expectation of what it's going to be like when it goes in. But I think that, again, community is a big opportunity for advisors to bring added value to the relationships with their clients. And you think bigger picture, if the community got so strong, that community could be a marketing tool on its own. Like, hey, there's this great group of people. I want to be in with those people. And the only way to be a part of that community is to work with Arliss Wealth or whoever the firm is. So I see a huge opportunity now. Being able to build it out, we'll see if it happens. I've got the structure for it. So let's just see if we can get clients engaged, because the thing that I've learned from our community is that engagement is key in collaboration. You can't have one or two people dominating the space, whether that's an online community or whatever community. You need to have people that are all engaged, and you want them to have ownership in the community as well.
I think one thing that facilitates is just the ability. People want to talk about this stuff. I think they're hungry for that. I think about it's like when you're in high school and you leave biology class after like a hard test. What's the first thing you do? You go congregate by the locker and talk about it. People want to kind of have these peer-to-peer conversations in addition to, learning from an expert or their advisor. They want to hear what other people are doing. There's a sort of benefit to kind of having candid, transparent conversations with your peer group. And I think communities really in our space facilitate that in a really valuable way for a lot of people.
All right, let's before we get to the final question, let's hit a few quick short answer ones, kind of more along the tangible things an advisor could walk away with. So you live in the marketing world, doing a phenomenal job. Are there any tools that you would recommend advisors check out when it comes to helping with marketing?
Yeah. Let's see.
I think that's a hard one. I think of scheduling things like Buffer or apps like that will kind of help you push things out. Because again, if you're running the show yourself, being able to take 30 minutes on Monday and plan out, even if it's just distributing your content through the week, get that out of the way. But anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, we use Asana for project management. If you have a lot of work streams going, it is a great, really simple, easy to use tool. I think if you're looking to start a newsletter, I know a lot of people who have amazing things to say about the Substack platform. Medium is where we host our corporate blog, super intuitive. So if you wanted to start a cadence of content development in the form of blog posts, that's a great tool for you to use. I'm
gonna be rude real quick. I'm gonna interrupt you. I'm gonna do a Kanye. So why host on Medium versus putting your blog on public.com?
Medium helps distribute to a larger audience. So You're not just kind of putting it up on your own space. It makes it more discoverable and kind of gives you more reach beyond just the people going to your website. Since we're an app, we get plenty of website visitors, but a lot of people just go straight to the download or the app store to download. And so Medium helps with that distribution.
Okay. Just because I haven't researched it that much, but I think I read one place and I didn't verify it, but do you own your content on Medium or does Medium own your content?
I am not sure I could answer that without looking it up further.
No, that's fair. No, honesty is fair. That's fine. It's something for us to look up. So no big deal. That was the reason that I'm real big on ownership. So I want to own my content. It's great to have it distributed, but but it's different for an advisor and again for you guys. So I just
Yeah,
was curious.
I will say, we use Medium for kind of more like announcements if we're announcing a product feature or something.
Gotcha.
We do host our kind of our long form educational content on our site.
Perfect.
So yeah, let me know what you find out about that.
I
I'm not
will.
actually sure.
All right. And then any resources that you're making, any like books or people to follow or blogs to subscribe to when it comes to creative marketing? Like we need tools to help us advisors break this mold that we've been in.
Yeah. So personally, I like to look outside of the obvious. So I think most people would say the obvious is to just follow people who are giving you tips about marketing or giving you
Mm-hmm.
tips about whatever. I like to look at people who are doing the work and like
Mm-hmm.
actually look at the output and learn from them as they're doing it, not just kind of a thought leader who's explaining it. I think there's great thought leaders too, but just personally, that's how I get more inspired.
Mm-hmm.
And I also get most inspired by looking outside of our space a lot of times, because what we are doing is we want to do it a little differently. So there's a lot of brands and marketers I follow that are doing interesting things. On the growth front, Morning Brew's kind of trajectory has been amazing. They have had a lot of success. So kind of watching how they're doing things there is inspiring to me. Another brand I love to follow is Aviation Gin, which is a small gin company that is now owned by Ryan Reynolds. They are notorious for doing super creative kind of culture Jackie campaigns and stunts. And so again, they're in the beverages industry. We're in financial services, but there's a lot we can be learning from there. And then in terms of just kind of growth and even design, like a lot of startups, even like earlier stage companies than us, I watch what they're doing and get inspiration. So I think the biggest thing for me as a marketer is not just, I really feel like in any space, like the best way to learn is not to look directly at your competitors or your kind of direct set. It's to look outside and see what people are doing elsewhere, because there's a lot that you can learn from those companies, even if they're not in your space.
I think that's great advice. And I think if you're struggling to figure out what brands to look at, well, what are brands that resonate with you, and just pay attention to what they're doing. But I agree. I try to look outside of finance. I mean, even though public's in finance, technically, you guys aren't doing it like finance. But I look at companies like Fast and what they've done recently. That's been very cool. That to me, that excites me as well. And if I want financial advisors to break the finance mold, we have to look outside. So I think that's great advice. Okay, final question. Everybody gets the same question. I've reworded it because I think it was hard to understand beforehand. So just basically, what's Katy Perry's edge? What is it that you see differently than your peers that allows you to be you and so successful?
So I think for me, I have somewhat eccentric interests and experiences, and these allow me, I think, to relate to a lot of different kinds of people. Like I could level with anybody really, and I think that doesn't really sound like a superpower, but I found that it's really helpful to be able to find ways to relate to people who maybe aren't living in the same city as you or have the same worldview. So I grew up in a tiny town. Like our neighbors had goats. I now live in Brooklyn, New York. Two very different things, but kind of my experiences have allowed me to kind of get on the level with people in different ways. And I just think sometimes people forget in business, they go right to the business.
Mm-hmm.
It's about human beings, building trust with people, listening to people, understanding where they're coming from, having empathy for what their needs are, especially in like marketing and partnerships. And so I think kind of being able to, yes, draw on your own experiences, but be able to step outside of like your world, your bubble. I always say that like Twitter is not real life. It is an amalgamation of people you follow, and you're being served content around the people you follow. So it's kind of cyclical. So just understanding that and being aware of that and being able to step outside of yourself to really kind of understand people who aren't just like you is so important for a marketer, especially if you're marketing to a mass audience where most of the people aren't going to be just like you. And you have to be able to understand what those people care about. And so for me, I think that's something I just particularly am good at. And I think that helps a lot as a marketer to kind of get on the level with people.
That's great. That's definitely a superpower. And if you think about it, you're trying to market to a variety of different people. You need to have that ability to relate and think about the way somebody else might receive something. So no, I think it's great. Well, you have encouraged us to follow people that are doing a good job at marketing and see what they're doing. So where can everybody follow you in public? Drop all of the important stuff that I'll link to in the show notes.
Public on Twitter at Public. I'm on Twitter at Katie E. Perry. Don't accidentally follow the pop star. She has enough followers. And then I would encourage everyone, if you guys want to check out public.com, you can get the app on public.com or in the App Store. Like we said before, if you're looking to kind of guide your clients through the process of having these conversations, analyzing opportunities and investing, we've created a responsible environment. We've also created a way for you to kind of be with them in that experience. So you could start a chat group with 4 or 5 clients and discuss news topics. You could even set conversation starters to kind of keep things going. And so if you're looking to kind of, like you said, build community and keep that going in a responsible environment that really makes learning fun, I would encourage everyone to go check out the app and share it, with the people you work with.
And I will speak on the behalf of public.com, even though they may not want to. If you are an advisor and you decide that you're going to distribute content in the form of answering questions and being in there engaging as a part of your marketing strategy, don't be a sleazeball. Don't take the DM approach, the LinkedIn, and bring it to public, because that's not going to be good. They don't want to hear it. So if you're going to use it for those reasons, be genuine and be having conversations that are there to help people, and let the chips fall where they may be. Don't make us look bad inside of public. So I will say that.
That's the best way to build an audience. You're not going to build an audience, sending links to people. It's by creating great content, and that's the best way to market yourself.
And we will end on that note, because that's a great note. Well, Katie, I really appreciate you taking the time to share all this knowledge with us. A lot of things that we have not heard on the podcast yet. So you brought a lot of great ideas to the table for us. So I appreciate that. Everybody go check out public.com, follow Katie on Twitter, and be sure to check them out. So Katie, thank you again. Everybody, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode.